You guys have a number of initiatives out there about that deal with war crimes or potential war crimes or investigating potential war crimes in Ukraine. And I'm just wondering, Jake's comments this morning in Mexico City about looking at or saying that Iran might be complicit in any such war crimes is something that is being looked at. So I'm just wondering, is this an active area of investigation at least from the elements that you guys are involved in?
So, Matt, you were right that there are a number of elements, and we are discussing, and when I say we, I mean primarily here at the State Department, Beth Van Schaak, our ambassador at large for global criminal justice, and her team, and others are discussing with other countries, with other entities, other venues, vehicles, and fora that may be appropriate to help adjudicate the question of war crimes. We've talked about some of the initiatives that are already underway. First and foremost, the cooperation we have and the support we're lending to the Prosecutor General of Ukraine and to that entity, knowing that the Prosecutor General, of course, has jurisdiction, has immense interest in pursuing these crimes, but also what the OSCE is doing, what the Human Rights Council has set up with the support of Secretary Blinken and the United States, and other initiatives that have been put forward by other countries and entities as well. We've also made the point that we're not looking merely at those responsible for pulling the trigger or for pressing the button, as it were. We are prepared in accordance with international humanitarian law to go all the way up the ladder to see to it who precisely is responsible for issuing these orders and not only for taking these actions. If in the course of that work we are in a position to determine that the Iranian government as a whole or that senior Iranian officials are complicit or responsible for war crimes, we will work to hold them to account as well. We've made no secret of the fact that Iran is providing Russia with much needed security assistance. And security assistance is almost euphemistic in this sense, because this is more to the point the provision of lethal equipment that Russia is using every single day to target civilian infrastructure, to target energy infrastructure, to potentially even target civilians themselves. We've made the determination early on in Russia's war against Ukraine that Russia's forces have committed war crimes. We have continued to document evidence of war crimes, and if that evidence points to another state, points to other foreign actors involved in these war crimes, we'll work to hold them to account as well.
Okay, but you, like as you just said, you have already made that determination with Russia.
That's right.
You have not yet made it.
We have not made a formal determination when it comes to other states or state actors.
Thank you.
We follow up on that one.
Sure.
Unlike Russia, Iran is a state sponsor designated by the United States government. Does it change how you have, once you make a determination, how you approach the foreign crimes investigation, and also accountability for folks in the United States be able to, go after Iranian leaders by using the U.S. law and by also using the fact that Iran is the state sponsor within the U.S. legal system.
There are certain differences between the state sponsor of terrorism designation that Iran carries and other designations that are attached to Russian entities, to Russian actors, but the designation of a state sponsor of terrorism doesn't allow us, or I should say, the fact that Russia is not a designated state sponsor of terrorism does not deprive us of any tools that we can appropriately and as warranted wield against the Russian government. We have a number of authorities that we have used to hold Russia to account. We've imposed biting sanctions, biting export controls, other economic and financial measures. You can see the effectiveness of those measures, the compounding effectiveness of those measures across many different metrics that you look at, even the metrics that the Russian government, the central bank, the Russian finance ministry has itself issued. You see that in the slowing economic growth and the economic downturn, but also in the mere fact that Russia is being forced to turn to states with whom it typically has not partnered on security assistance. Iran being one of them, the DPRK being another as well. So we are wielding every appropriate authority. We're also working with Congress to attempt to find a way to hold Russia accountable for its aggression in such a way that allows us to impose costs without having to grapple with the unintended implications that the state sponsor of terrorism designation carries.
Singapore sanctioned 7 Iranian industry leaders just last Friday, the leaders of the factory, the drone factory, and also Mrs. Parker's state. It doesn't involve Mrs. Parker. What's the next step in this case? Is the Iranian supreme leader potential subject to, let's say, U.S. sanctions once you determine Iran's involvement in this?
Well, these sanctions are pursuant to various executive orders. These executive orders spell out precisely the criteria that we look at when we determine if a foreign actor is a potential target for any given executive order. So we're not taking anything off the table. We are going to do and take actions that intend to disrupt this pipeline of lethal supplies, lethal materials that have gone from Iran to Russia. But we've also talked about this as a two-way street. The relationship between Russia and Iran is one of a close security partner, a close military partner. Iran has become Russia's most important supplier of needed security assistance, but Russia too has in turn started to provide Iran with security assistance that it needs. So we are going to look at all relevant tools, all relevant authorities, all relevant laws that are on the books to hold to account those who are responsible for this. Mark.
Can we go to Brazil and let me
Can I
ask
follow
you?
Russia one more?
One more on Russia.
Yes. At the recent summit between Russian President Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping, highlighted their military cooperation. How do you think China and Russia military cooperation will affect Ukraine and the Korean Peninsula?
Well, I can speak to Ukraine, of course, and we have made also no secret of the fact that we are watching very closely. We are watching very closely the decisions that the PRC makes when it comes to any Russian requests for security assistance. We know that Russia has been forced, as I've already said, to turn to other partners, Iran, the DPRK, for security assistance precisely because we are starving the Russian state of the inputs that it needs to prosecute its war against Ukraine most effectively. And again, that is putting it euphemistically. We are starving systematically the Russian government of what it needs, what it thinks it needs to fulfill what it deems as its mission to kill the Ukrainian people, to target Ukrainian infrastructure, to go after Ukrainian cities and towns, hitting in the process civilian targets, apartment buildings, residential buildings, schools, hospitals, nurseries. Nothing, it seems, has been off limits to the Russian state in its pursuit of this brutal war. So we're watching very closely. We've been very clear with the PRC, including in private, including when the two presidents met in Bali last November, about any costs that would befall the PRC should they decide to assist Russia in a systematic effort to evade U.S. sanctions or in the provision of security assistance that would then be used against the Ukrainian people in Ukraine. So we're watching very closely.
We'll have to continue with